Hello, our Ask Me Anything session today is with Martins Sulte, the CEO and co-founder of Mintos. Mintos is a marketplace for investing in loans, which connects lenders and investors all over the world. Hello, Martins.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us. So how and why did you start Mintos?
Well, that was already some while ago. So we've been around which is already, I guess, 6 years. So we launched in January 2015. That's when basically the first loans were put on the platform and were available for investors to invest in. I think the story of Mintos goes back to basically, I would say there was kind of quite a lot of backstory before actually we launched Mintos, and I think a lot of things just came together. First and foremost, I would perhaps say that it's kind of having this entrepreneurial bug, like myself. That's something which definitely impacted the kind of decision to start actually something. And then all my experience so far has been, or before Mintos, has been in finance one way or the other. And then also kind of, I'm always been very eager to learn about new technologies, about what's happening in kind of the tech space. So that kind of came together. And then on top of that, I had finished my MBA and I was looking to basically what to do after, and basically just decided to take a plunge into the entrepreneurship, and just was looking what is happening in the world. And at that time, which is 2014, when the idea came across, the kind of financial technology space was kind of heating up. And I was particularly kind of interested into the kind of investing space and what is happening there. Maybe with less kind of notion that, yeah, we have to fix what is happening on the investing side or like in investing space in Europe, which evolved after like that we saw, okay, the market is actually pretty huge, but much more looking at that is exciting, basically business model, and we can put a new asset on the table for retail investors across Europe, actually.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so how does it work actually, investing in loans? How does it compare to other types of investments?
So yeah, and so what Mintos does, so we do provide a marketplace for investing in loans. So that means that retail investors, when they come to Mintos, they can, well, invest in loans. It's a fairly straightforward way to do that. And basically what they get is they get a fraction of loan. And when the borrower repays the loan, with monthly installments usually, then basically as an investor or any investor, they get their principal back plus interest, and that is basically how they earn a return on their capital. So in that fashion, so we've been working for a while, and we have amassed already quite a significant user base. So today we have more than 400,000 investors across Europe, and we have facilitated 7 billion euros of loans, which have been funded on Mintos, and that has helped investors to earn additional return. And basically, loans as an asset has been a good addition. We believe it's a good addition to any portfolio, and we've seen that investors are basically picking it up more and more and actually adding to their portfolio loans as an asset. And definitely excited to continue and to go from where we are today.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. So I have a question about the services that Mintos is providing actually. So I can imagine that mainly is like managing the whole platform as a marketplace, some kind of a marketplace between investors and companies that are, or persons that are putting their loans there. But is there something more about services that you are providing, some credit scoring or any additional services as Mintos?
Yeah, sure. It's been kind of constant development on what we do. So There are complementary services, if you will, which we provide. So, for instance, investors can invest in 10 different currencies on Mintos, and then we do provide foreign, basically currency exchange on the platform as well. So, likewise, what we have developed now is Mintos Risk Score. So basically, we put a score for each and every loan on the marketplace, so that it is easier for investors to basically pick and choose which loans they would want to invest. Which is important to emphasize is that investors can pick and choose the loans themselves, and it's on a loan by loan basis, and actually fractions of loans, and they can start very small, so they can start with just 10 euros or equivalent in other currency, and build very diversified portfolios. So we do provide the same auto invest tools. We do provide kind of Mintos strategies. So there's a whole suite of services which we provide to make investing in loans easier for retail investors. And our average retail investor, they are investing something like 4,000 euros or so. So we help them to do it in most often than not in automated manner. So they tend to use automated tools and make the user experience great. So that's what we've been doing for since we started.
So you mentioned that Europe is your main target market. Is this correct, or maybe you also have some plans to be more global? How it works from your perspective?
So at Mintos, we are a two-sided marketplace. So on one side, we do have the retail investors. So those are people who are looking to basically deploy their capital and invest and get a return on that capital. There we do focus mostly on Europe. So it's going to be actually more even Western Europe. So kind of Germany is a big market for us. Spain, Netherlands, the same, Austria, and kind of Western Europe countries are very well represented in our investor base mix, right? That's one side of the marketplace, and then the other side of the marketplace is the loan supply, is basically where the loans come from. And there we do have the loan supplies coming from 32 different countries all across the globe. There it's going to be much more spread out. So it's going to be anything from, Indonesia and Vietnam in Southeast Asia. It's going to be Kazakhstan and, Armenia in Central Asia. It's going to be Europe, obviously. It's going to be Africa. It's going to be also Latin America. So it's fairly spread out, 32 countries where the loan supply comes from. So in essence, actually, what we then do is we connect the money which is sitting in the Western Europe and not put to good use. We connect with basically people and small businesses in need in those regions and continents.
So I have some additional question because it's quite interesting when it comes to the marketplace. What was a bigger challenge for you, to build the loan supply part or the investors part of the marketplace?
That's a very good question, and especially for the marketplaces. So it is a challenge to basically build them in a balanced way, because obviously we kind of don't want to push too hard on the demand side if there's no loan supply available, right? Kind of doesn't make sense to bring in investors if they don't have loans to invest in, and likewise to basically have a lot of loan supply and not having demand also doesn't work like that. So it's been basically what we've been working is balancing the two sides. I would say that initially for sure that was more kind of on the investor side, basically educating investors and showing them that, hey, well, loans is a valid asset class which you would want to invest in, and it's a great risk adjusted returns which you can get. So on average, investors so far, an average is not a good number in Mintos context because it's very kind of high range, very wide range, but still on average, they have earned something like 9-10% after all the kind of recoveries and bad debt, right, over the years. But then as we grow, then it's been also at times when the loan supply is also a challenge because there's more influx of investors. So I would say the challenge is actually to build it in a balanced way, not necessarily one side or the other, especially just maintaining the balance.
Thanks.
Thank you. So Mintos is at quite an important stage right now because you've recently received the investment firm and electronic money institution licenses. So congratulations on this. And can you tell us how important are these two for Mintos and how do they add value to your services?
That's definitely a significant milestone for us. So finally, we have kind of a clear regulatory certainty on how to basically provide the services which we provide. So as basically a new player and actually a new kind of offering, obviously that the kind of regulatory, it comes with some regulatory uncertainty. So we've been kind of juggling through that like since the beginning, and we've been working on actually getting the European investment firm license and European electronic institution license for quite some time. So directly, I would say definitely like 2 years, indirectly for even longer. And it is a significant milestone. So what it means is actually the key beneficiaries of that are our clients. Those are investors, which basically do get additional proof of kind of stamp of approval that we are regulated and the activities what we do are in line with European regulations. And then like in practical terms, what they get is additional security. So additional, says the same investor compensation scheme, the funds being segregated, and kind of other things which kind of adds to the security, and they do get additional transparency when it comes to information disclosure. So basically there is much more standardized form how they get the information about investments they want to make. So that is for sure significant milestone, and we are very eager to now we are in the process of basically transitioning from kind of the previous setup to fully regulated setup, and then basically passporting the license and our activities across Europe, and then really actually grow the business from there. So very excited about the next years or perhaps the next few years, and I think it's going to be it's kind of paradoxical to say that it's a beginning for us since we've been around for some years, so since we launched 2015, but I would say it's really the beginning for us, like putting it in a kind of really scalable manner in front of investors.
Mm-hmm. So I would like to ask you about very specific aspect of let's say regulations or related regulations features or services that you have to provide. It's a question about your onboarding procedures, which sounds like something quite challenging when it comes to addressing many countries, many markets. So if you could describe for us how it actually works in practice, those onboarding processes in Mintos.
I think like these days, this onboarding is fairly similar across many, if not most of the fintech players, or actually any service providers. So that will start with obviously registering, providing additional information about name, like address, country, and kind of very basic stuff. And then there's going to be verification. So basically verifying yourself, which is again like is very kind of streamlined process with basically you need your laptop or your phone to do that and verify that basically you are who you say you are. And then we do run certain background checks when it comes to AML. So those are the things which gonna basically lead to onboarding or to successful registration. All in all, that takes like few minutes, and well, in most of the cases, it's super smooth. In some cases, maybe there are some issues, but then there's usually a reason why there are issues. So I would say onboarding is fairly kind of streamlined.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm. And in the context of communication, mostly probably with retail investors, can you tell us something about your Ask Mintos Anything sessions? What role do they play for you?
Sure. So Ask Mintos Anything, which is basically adoption from Ask Me Anything. It is what it says is basically we put out the date or a theme, and then run basically a session where investors can participate live and submit questions beforehand, and we basically go through all of those questions. And that is part of our kind of culture. So what we very much value is transparency, both inside the company and then also when we talk with investors. That's obviously just one channel how we actually communicate with investors. It's a fairly good channel, but I think obviously the same email is big part of communication. Our social media is big part of communication channels. We do have our investor Mintos community, so that's another channel where basically we do communicate with investors, and we basically use different channels and use what is maybe there are different preference for different investors. What we do is basically put us out there and super reachable, and basically are there to answer investor questions. And that's one part of our basically approach when it comes to building and fostering community.
Yeah.
So before we finish, we would like to ask you about your plans. So if you could tell us about your short-term and long-term vision for Mintos, yeah, it would be very interesting.
Yeah. Short term, we already touched a little bit. So it's basically about rolling out the Mintos service across Europe. So finishing transition plan and basically rolling out our passporting our license and activities across Europe. So that's definitely in the short term. If you look kind of medium term, then it is about really putting loans as a established asset on the table for any retail investor who wants to invest. So that's definitely what we're gonna continue working. So I think it is a great asset, and with all the kind of technologies which we have in kind of which are available these days, basically actually retail investors can participate in this asset class. And then in the medium, it's also basically expanding to other assets as well, and providing other investment opportunities, because what we see with investors on Mintos is obviously that loans is only, and we are also very much talking about that loans should be only part of your portfolio. So it shouldn't be like all the investable assets should not be put perhaps in loans, so you should diversify. And so what we are in the medium term, or actually already short term, we are now working on the same ETFs. So we're going to provide ETFs as well on the Mintos, and then in the medium term we're going to add other investment opportunities as well. In the long term, so what we are looking to do is basically to build the go-to investment platform for retail investors in Europe. So anyone who is looking to start investing, basically your next generation of investors, they actually have Mintos in mind, and we can provide diversified and passive investing experience for anyone in Europe.
Really interesting and exciting. So this was our last question, and would like to thank you for taking the time to speak to our audience, and good luck with all the developments.
Thank you.